What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Inside Inter Miami. I'm your host, Andre Fernandez, joined as always by our Inter Miami beat writer, Michelle Kaufman. We are back. Michelle's got that backdrop, which has now made its debut. New stadium is no longer completely new. People have been inside. The fans have been inside. The team has played a game there. The game didn't look as good as the stadium did. We're going to talk a little bit about the new place. We're going to talk about the pomp and circumstance, about the grand opening. Jorge Mas was there, gave a very impassioned speech. David Beckham almost jumped into the crowd at the beginning before the game even started. Was welcomed by a lot of La Familia, a lot of the fans that were there packing the place. It was a sellout crowd, 26,700 to see Miami draw, not win. What they like to do a lot lately, draw with other teams 2-2 with a let's be honest, not an elite Austin team in the MLS. So we'll get a lot of reaction post game from Javier Mascherano. Maxi Falcone talked about some of the problems that the team is having on the defensive side, and perhaps maybe a little bit of a lack of aggressiveness and focus early in matches. But we'll also talk about a little bit how it went outside of the stadium. Was the traffic terrible? Public transportation? How did the logistics go? How was the experience for everyone as they open this new era in new stadium? And let's just start with that, Michelle. Let's talk about it. The stadium, I think personally, I mean, you agree with me, the stadium itself looked great. It had the feel, especially once the game got started, of an international soccer stadium. Even if on the outside, we still have to get past the gravel and the construction and all of that. But the place was good.
No, I agree. I think that the experience exceeded my expectations. I will give you that, that everything from the traffic. Now, I got there 5 hours early. I got there at 2 o'clock. I got 5.5. I got there at 2 for a 7:30 kickoff, which I don't usually do that, nor should that be expected. But I did speak to a lot of people who arrived at 5 and they got in fine. There was a short wait, to get in the gate, which is normal. If you've gone to a Dolphin game, if you've gone to a Heat game, getting in, getting out of a concert. I mean, you're not just going to drive right in and there's no other cars ahead of you. I mean, this is normal. If you go into a car wash, you have to wait to go in the car wash. So I think that the traffic flow was better than expected for sure, especially coming in. There was some delay, I heard, from the garage coming out. There was a little bit of a line for people leaving the garage area to turn onto 14th Street, which was the only exit that was being used. So there are some logistics there that people are.
I got caught in that leaving, but I will say this, because this has happened to me at other venues in Miami. At least it was well directed. I was never stuck for like 5 minutes, stopped and waiting and wondering when am I gonna get out of here. So to their credit, the staff, it was staffed pretty well as far as
they had a lot of staff. There were a lot of people invest. There were a lot of people showing people how to get around.
I'll give them props for that, for sure.
Yeah. And for the entry, and by the way, the public transportation, the people who took the Tri-Rail had a really good experience. And the Tri-Rail and the Metro Rail are at the same station. It's a 10 to 15 minute walk. 10 to 12 is what most people told me, depending how fast you walk. But the people who took Tri-Rail, all of a sudden, people who never have used Tri-Rail to go from Broward to Dade or from Palm Beach County to Dade, they've always known it's there. You stop at those train tracks for that little train that goes by, but most people have never hopped on that little train. They just sit in their car and watch the little train go by. Well, this time, I believe that 1,000 to 2,000 people rode on the way home. I think around the same number got there in the same trains. 1,000 to 2,000 people or so took the train, and they had a good experience. They got there. There were plenty of trains running. They got off the train. There was a pedestrian walkway type thing that you just follow the path. You have to cross a big road, but it was a 10 to 15 minute walk. And those people did not have to worry about parking their car. They didn't have to worry about waiting after to get out of the garage. They went on the public transportation and they had a good experience. So I was really pleased to see that. And then the stadium itself, yes, I mean, around the stadium is a construction zone. There's cranes everywhere. There's forklifts. There's dust and big piles, a lot of piles of rubble everywhere.
Yeah.
But once you are at the stadium itself, the stadium really did show itself well on TV. We in the media, we had a good experience in the press box. They had everything was set up really nicely considering the time constraints. And by the way, for those who are wondering, they still do not have their certificate of occupancy. But I spoke to the city. They got a temporary special event permit, which is just for that day. They have to have special precautions. They have to have X number of fire trucks. They have to have different things until they have the certificate of occupancy. I was told that this is exactly how the Ultra Music Festival operates. This is how other events operate. If they don't have a full certificate of occupancy yet, they get the temporary limited permit that allows them to host the event. It doesn't mean it's unsafe. It means that they don't have all of the things that they need. All of the criteria to get a certificate of occupancy have not been fulfilled yet. They are working on it. They're hoping to get it before this next game. If they don't, they may have to do the limited permit again this next weekend until the following week. They're very aware. They're trying to finish up exactly what they need to do, and then they're going to get that permit. But I think it was, I have friends and family who went as fans, and they had a good experience considering it was the first day.
Yeah, and that log jam, by the way, at the end, part of it, which neglected to mention, there was a post-game concert that, speaking of Ultra, I saw the video, it had the feel of Ultra with the stage and all of that. But that contributed to why people got out so late, and there was a bit of a log jam getting out of the stadium, which there's always going to be, if they pack the place the way they did, there's always going to be a little bit of that right after the game. But I think it prolonged a little longer because of a lot of people stayed to see that concert. It was still pretty packed after we walked out.
Yeah, but yeah, overall, I mean, the building itself, it looks beautiful. The optics are good on TV. If you were watching on Apple, and even just when you're in the stadium looking around, I mean, it was, the roof covering and the light shows they did, and the lighting is very cool. There's a lot of pink lighting, there's a lot of purple lighting. So even as the game is going on, the little purple sticks. I thought it was an experience. I thought I'll even mention that, I thought that the Mark Anthony rendition of the national anthem was really nice. A lot of people mentioned it. He did a very stirring, soulful rendition of the national anthem, which I thought was very good. And overall, I have to say, I was ready, to be honest. I was ready for chaos. I was ready for a bit of a disaster from the traffic sense, from the parking, from the building itself. And I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised, as were most people that I've spoken to. There's always going to be some complaints. It was the first game, so it's definitely not a well-oiled machine. There was dust everywhere. They're going to clean it up. But I can tell you one thing. From Thursday, I went to the open training on Thursday. And Thursday, just 48 hours between the open training to the opening of the stadium, they did a lot. Even in those 48 hours, I saw improvement. So I'm assuming that by this Saturday coming up and by the next one coming up, they're going to be doing a lot of cleanup and a lot of fixing of, some of the stuff that still look very much unfinished.
Well, they have three more home games within the next few weeks, less than a month period of time. So plenty of time to shake out some of the kinks and like get everything kind of cleared up. And I mean, obviously, it's not going to be a finished product very, very soon.
And neither is the team, which we'll talk about.
Well,
it's also not a finished product.
You beat me to it.
I think the team is also a work in progress, shall we say? But yeah, the stadium, it was exciting, and to see Jorge and Jose Mas and David Beckham and their families, standing there with the big giant scissors for the ribbon cutting. That was a long, long, long journey, which we talked about last time. But for them to be standing there, I put on the dusty steps, the steps were dusty, but they were standing there with a giant pair of scissors, cutting that pink ribbon with all of the fans that were so excited, banging the drums and cheering and chanting and, going into their new home. Yeah. This is the new permanent home. This is a new NUNEW era. Yeah. This is a new era for this club. For the first time, the Miami MLS team is playing in Miami, in the 305 area code. This team that's called Miami is playing in Miami. So this is a new era. It's very exciting. David Beckham and Javier and Jorge Mas were extremely excited.
Yeah.
They both did the beaches.
A 12-year journey completed for David Beckham in particular, a 30-plus year journey for soccer, to bring soccer to Miami, as you well documented in that story last week that you could still find on MiamiHerald.com if you missed it the first time. But let's hear from David Beckham and what this meant.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here tonight. I came to America and the MLS 20 years ago, and my dream was to win championships, help raise the game of soccer that I love so much, and to build my own team. 13 years ago, I announced Miami was my choice. We had no name, we had no badge, we had no stadium. Today, I stand in our new home. We are champions of the MLS. We have the best player in the history of the game playing in Miami. Dreams really do come true. But I have not done this alone. To make all of our dreams come true, I want to thank my partners Jorge and Jose Mas and their incredible family for their passion and commitment to our club and especially our city. I believed in Miami, but Miami believed in us. There are many people who I would like to thank for everybody that has done something and done incredible things to this stadium, working tirelessly up until an hour before we opening of this incredible Miami stadium. The Miami staff, some of who have been with us since day one, so we are really family. To the Commissioner Don Garber, thank you for your patience and trust for Miami, and thank you for helping build this league. To our academy players watching and our young academy players that are playing today, I couldn't be prouder to see you living your dream of playing this game in your city and winning championships. To the players that we have brought in that have been part of our history at our club, thank you for believing in Miami and thank you for believing in the MLS. Thank you to our MLS winning coach, Javier Mascherano, and all of his staff. To our leader, Lionel Messi. The most decorated player in the history of the game. We will be forever grateful to you for your trust in us and in Miami. And of course, thank you to our fans. You are home. La Familia, this is for you. Without you, we are nothing. You have given us love, your faith, and your passion, and we couldn't be happier to welcome you home. Lastly, to my family, I love you, and we built this for you. Thank you.
13-year journey.
Yeah, Dave, huh?
13-year journey. I'm sorry, I said 12.
No, it is 12. It's 12 since he came. 13 years ago, he announced that he was going to have a team. 12 years ago, he came and announced that it was going to be Miami.
Yeah.
He knew he wanted to do it in Miami, but 12, 13 years, whatever it is, a long odyssey.
Yeah. Yeah.
A long journey. He was extremely patient.
With the obstacles that were in his way, it was.
He went through a lot of partnerships. He had a lot of different partners.
Yep.
And all these partnerships ended up breaking up. He had a lot of different locations in mind. None of those were working. He was jumping hurdles more than an Olympic hurdler like Edwin Moses or whatever. I'm dating myself.
Wow.
So, I know that's really old. There has to be a hurdler that we know sooner than that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, a lot of hurdles, a lot of roadblocks for David Beckham. And he finally ended up, pairing up with the Mas brothers. And that was the magic key, because they know how to get things done in Miami. They're very plugged in Miami. and they also are in the construction business. So that helped a lot with getting this stadium in the short amount of time. And it really is, they basically built this thing in under 2 years, at least the stadium part, which is pretty remarkable when I think about how many construction projects going on in my neighborhood, houses that have been under construction for 3 years and they're still not done. So anyway, so yeah, overall, I thought it was a very exciting day for the ownership, a very exciting day for the fans, even for us in the media. Was a new start in our own in a stadium that's closer to many of our homes for those of us who live in Dade County. And shorter commute for some people, longer commute for others, including the team. The team now has to come on a bus from Broward County to Dade to go to their games, which they didn't have to do before. Before they would just drive their cars from their homes to the stadium, and now they do have to take a bus to come to the games. But anyway, big day for both owners. Jorge Mas, of course. David, you could tell when he said the word home, we're standing here in our home, he broke up a tiny bit there. He was pretty emotional all day. And I love the moment where the owners went over to La Familia and were standing there applauding them, and then literally practically went into the stands. David Beckham was
speaking of hurdling, he went over the barrier like a hockey player.
He hurdled over the barrier, hurdled over the barricade, and went over there and was really close up with the fans. They were taking pictures and selfies with him. He was high-fiving everybody. It was a really nice moment for David Beckham and for Jorge Mas. We're going to hear now from Jorge, who was in full Jorge mode. He was so excited. Let's hear what he had to say.
Buenas noches, Miami. Como se ha dicho, esto comenzó con un sueño de crear un club de fútbol que sea un reflejo de nuestra comunidad, de mi ciudad natal. Todo lo que hemos podido lograr en estos últimos 6 años, de comenzar en Fort Lauderdale, en el Chase Stadium, y le quiero dar las gracias a todos los de Fort Lauderdale que hicieron posible nuestra estancia por tantos años ahí. Pero no solamente somos soñadores, somos hombres que cumplimos con nuestra palabra. Le prometimos a Miami, a nuestra afición, que íbamos a crear un club que cuando se hable de fútbol en los Estados Unidos de América, se piense en el rosa de Inter Miami. Y lo hemos cumplido. Le prometimos, cuando nos dijeron que estábamos locos, que íbamos a firmar el mejor jugador del mundo, y tu número 10 juega aquí. Les prometimos en la escalinata del Ayuntamiento de la ciudad de Miami que íbamos a construir un estadio que iba a ser la envidia de todos los estadios de fútbol de los Estados Unidos, y aquí estamos esta noche estrenando el New Stadium. Y esto ha sido posible porque lo hemos podido construir sobre los hombros de la generación que nos precede y de nuestros padres. En nuestro caso, mi padre y mi madre, que llegaron a este país sin nada, solamente con un sueño de hacer una vida mejor para sus hijos. Hoy le digo a mis padres que hemos cumplido. Y eso es Miami. Eso es la pasión que nos caracteriza. Good night, Miami, and I'd like to repeat some things in English. This was born of a dream, and this was built on the shoulders of the generation that preceded us, on a generation of our parents seeking freedom in the greatest country on earth. And today, on their shoulders, we say that we have delivered, because we're not only dreamers, we're men who deliver. And I want to leave you with one thought. History is built by the bold, and it remembers winners. And my dear friends, each and every one of you in Inter Miami, we are winners, and may today a new chapter of lifting additional trophies, in addition to the 4 reflected on the wall above our La Familia stand, we will deliver more trophies. Thank you. Adelante, and may God bless Inter Miami, the city of Miami, and the United States of America.
Sounds like a political speech. Sounds like he's running for office. Jorge Mas, very emotional, very passionate during that speech. I mean, he's the man has passion, and you know, you got to give it to him. He delivers. He said it right there in the speech. We are men who deliver. He said, when people thought we were crazy to say that we're bringing Lionel Messi, guess what? He's here. The best player in the world is playing for this team. When people said we couldn't have this stadium and we wouldn't be ready, here we are. Here we are in this building. You know, like, he finds a way to get it across the finish line. He really does. You have to give him credit. And his brother Jose, who's the quiet one in the background, who's working just as hard. It's just that Jorge is the front man. Jorge is the one who likes to talk.
He does the talking. Yep.
He does the talking, but believe me, Jose Mas is working just as hard as Jorge Mas. They really work in tandem. And then David Beckham, tireless. I mean, we spoke to Don Garber, the commissioner who was there, flew down from New York for the game, and he said his words were that it took his breath away. He said, when I walk in, it took my breath away, because he said, I was here 1 month ago, and quite frankly, he said he did not know how this building was going to be ready 1 month ago. And they kept saying, trust us, trust us. And he said, I learned one lesson from this. He said, I learned a lesson that sometimes when people tell you, trust me, this is going to be ready, you have to trust people sometimes. He was extremely impressed and surprised that they were able to get this project done and get it game ready when they did. So, and he mentioned David Beckham. Yeah, he mentioned that David Beckham, Don Garber, said a lot of people have not seen him in the boardroom over the years, seeing the tireless work that he put in. And he said that these 3 guys have a lot of courage, and also that the work ethic, that they just don't take no for an answer. That's what Don Garber said. These 3 men do not take no for an answer. They had the door slammed in their face so many times, and there they were, standing there in their pink castle.
Yeah, there's a few things there to unpack that I wanted to say. Well, one first is on the personal side, and Michelle, I know you can relate to this. You know, from when Jorge mentions the parents who came with nothing, you know, the Cuban side, that really hit, because that's the story of a lot of people. You know, in my family included.
And my family included too. My family also came from Cuba.
Right.
And your family came from Cuba, and they came with nothing. And the immigrant story of all the immigrants in this country, it definitely hits.
They're a success story. And then, you know, going to, we keep saying it to anyone who maybe doesn't have that perspective of watching soccer and seeing just the caliber. Yeah, them signing Messi still, when you have to, sometimes I still stop and think about it, take a step back and think about it. I can't even like put a comparison in American sports. It's like signing Michael Jordan times 10 when you think about the caliber of signing that is to this sport.
And signing him to, it would be like Michael Jordan signing with a basketball team in, let's say in Turkey, or in, you know, somewhere that has basketball, but it's not the top level, or, you know, like having Michael
not even
Jordan,
the top
LeBron
European
James.
Right.
Yeah, it would be like signing LeBron James to a basketball league, to like the Spanish league, let's say. La Liga, you know, the Spanish basketball league is a good league, but it's not the NBA.
Right.
So it would be like if LeBron James goes and plays in Spain, or something like that. I mean, it's kind of the equivalent, that you've got the best player in this sport chose, of all the leagues in the world to play in, he chose to come to the United States to play in Major League Soccer, which is a big, big statement. And Don Garber was asked about that, about the fact that standing in that building right at that moment was David Beckham and Lionel Messi, that two of the most famous, iconic figures in the sport over the last 20 years, both have chosen MLS and have chosen this team.
Think about it. I know, David.
About that.
People forget David Beckham is no slouch on the caliber of player situation that we're talking about, status that we're talking about.
The status, he's one of the most iconic figures in the. Everyone knows who he is.
Yeah,
All
very
the world,
few
show a
could
picture
exceed
of
that.
David Beckham. Show a picture of David Beckham anywhere in the world,
Right.
and everyone knows who he is. And the same with Messi.
And two things there with Don Garber. Yes, of course he's got to be thrilled because look at the impact this has had on MLS itself for the last 3 years, from money-wise, Apple TV deals, you name it, exposure, all of that as the league continues to grow. Yes, of course they've done a good job growing, but this is like MLS was growing, and then when Messi came in, it was like whoop, like it took a spike because of him, and
some bigger names are going to come.
Yeah,
some bigger names will keep coming.
Because
look who
of
just
him.
came. Yes, look at Son.
In a lot of cases.
Guys are saying, "Oh, well, if it's good enough for Messi, it's got to be good enough for me because I'm not Messi." And if Messi's choosing to play there, then I can certainly play there. You know, I mean, so it's had a huge impact.
Look at the opener. Look at the opener. Second largest crowd in the history of the league to see those two superstars opposite each other on the same field. And you never know, maybe down the road you get a rematch in the MLS Cup. Guess what? You may have to put it again somewhere big enough to hold that amount of people. But also the other point I wanted to make, Garber talking about Beckham, let's give him credit on that sense, what he's saying, that he's getting his hands dirty, he's going into the meetings, he's doing things. We've seen celebrity player owners before in sports that don't go that extra mile. So credit to David Beckham for going that extra mile and really diving into that aspect of it to try and create all of this, because not everybody would have been. Others would have made the effort, but maybe not been as hands-on.
No, so and they have their names on there like, oh, yeah, I'm a part owner of this, I'm part owner of no, David Beckham. And by the way, he goes to training. He shows up, he says hello to I've seen him out at the training site.
Yeah.
He goes and he says hello to the janitorial crew. He says hello to the people in the kitchen. He says hello to everybody, the ushers, the security guards. He's very, very hands-on. He's a very, very hands-on type owner. And Jorge Mas is very hands-on, and David Beckham is very hands-on. And really, you have to, nothing is perfect, obviously, and the building still is awaiting all the proper permits, and they still have construction to do. But overall, you have to say that the ownership has delivered on their promises so far. They really have. They have delivered. Now, the team.
Well, we spent, I was going to say, we spent a big chunk.
The team is not delivering.
Right.
This is the MLS defending champion, and it is early. We are not going to panic, ladies and gentlemen. We are not going to panic here on April 7th and say that the season is a mess and that they're not good or whatever. They are good. Right. They are near the top. They're in 4th place. They're near the top of the East, but they are not dominating the way they were during the playoffs. During the playoffs, they looked unbeatable. They were scoring goals left, right, and center like nothing. They really were. They were just a very strong team in November and December. And Javier Mascherano said even after this game that and you will hear from him, he felt like they took a little step back even from the NYCFC game to how they played in this game. So let's dive a little about the stadium. We'll give the stadium 5 stars for what they delivered on the opening day of the stadium. They gave a pretty good performance compared to what people expected. On the field, not so much.
Yeah, the stadium gets a great review on Yelp. The team right now probably gets like a 3 out of 5, something like that, at least for the moment. But all kidding aside, this team, in spurts, they have looked a little bit like the team they were last year, in spurts. And we saw some of those spurts in the final 30 or so minutes, as you mentioned.
Yeah, when they were peppering the goal, they had a lot of opportunities at the end of the game, but it was at the end. And by the way, it was when Luis Suarez came in, by the way.
The guy who everybody, and almost had the winner too. But point being, yes, at the end of the game, and it's early, but you can kind of start seeing a little bit of a trend. What happened at Yankee Stadium? They fell behind 2-1, and then they woke up, and very similar, peppering the net. Got 2 goals. Could have probably had a third had it not been for an offside. So from being able to talk to Maxi Falcone after the game, he said it. He goes, we'll hear from him too. But they were talking about the lack of intensity for a full 90 minutes right now with this team. That's part of it. The other side of it too is they're still mixing and matching some pieces. People, players like
it's under construction. Under
It's
construction.
it's under construction, just like that
They don't
stadium.
have their full permit. They don't have their
Yeah.
full occupancy.
No, not yet. Not yet.
They're
But let's
they're
yeah.
They're under construction.
Berterame is another one. A big money acquisition this offseason. Still hasn't really gelled completely. He hasn't started the past 2 games, has come off the bench, looked a little better, but still not quite there. So a lot of pieces moving around. Let's hear from Javier Mascherano talking about the game.
Bueno, nada, el estadio un poco lo mismo que repetir un poco lo que dije el jueves, ¿no? Un estadio espectacular, claramente de primer nivel y bueno, hoy con toda la gente, estadio repleto, increíble como el jueves que todavía había cosas por hacer, llegamos hoy y había un montón de cosas hechas, la verdad que lo que han trabajado todos los empleados del club en este tiempo ha sido increíble, así que felicitarlos sobre todo a ellos porque han estado día y noche para que esto pueda salir bien y hoy podamos jugar en las condiciones que jugamos. En cuanto al partido, creo que el primer tiempo no estuvimos bien, claramente no tuvimos intensidad, de hecho creo que regalamos la primera parte. Y en este tipo de partidos, con este tipo de rivales, cuando regalás la primera parte se te complica. De hecho nos fuimos 1-1, pero podríamos habernos ido abajo en el marcador. Creo que el segundo tiempo el equipo cambió claramente, más allá de que ellos se pusieron en ventaja nuevamente. El equipo lo intentó, fue otra la intensidad, los cambios entraron bien y bueno, nos vamos con la sensación de poco porque tuvimos 18 jugadas de gol, pero el fútbol, vuelvo a repetir, el fútbol no es apretar un botón y me activo cuando quiera y cuando lo quiero apretar me desactivo, esto no funciona así. Y no podemos desperdiciar la primera parte como lo hicimos. Así que la sensación es amarga, es triste, porque creo que el buen partido que habíamos hecho en Nueva York, hoy dimos un paso hacia atrás, sobre todo en la primera parte.
All right, so to summarize there, first of all, he talked about the stadium, first class stadium. He said just to see it, first class, the way it was packed, it was incredible. He gave high praise to the staff and the employees who were able to get it done. He said the same thing I'd mentioned before, that they were there Thursday and there was a lot of stuff undone. And he said, and then we arrived here Saturday and they had done so much work, even just since Thursday. So he praised them for that. For working day and night. He said, as far as the game goes, he said the first half we were not good. The team was lacking intensity. He said the second half was better. He thought the everyone played. There was more intensity in the second half. He felt that the subs that came in did a good job, but still they left. He leaves with a feeling of frustration, bitter, sad, frustrated. All of those adjectives were used because he said we had 18 goal scoring opportunities. And he said, that the thing that bothered him is that he said, I've said it many times, that football is not something where you turn on and off a switch. You flip a switch on and I'm going to play great and you flip a switch off. He said, it's not like that they have to play well from the start. The switch needs to go on when the whistle blows. The switch needs to go on. So, he said that he felt that unfortunately they took a step back, he felt, from the NYCFC game, that they took a step back and it's something that needs to be addressed. So what I would say about the lack of intensity, I don't know how or why there would be lack of intensity when these guys are debuting a new stadium. You would think that there would be so much excitement. So the only thing I could say would be two things. One, maybe there was just so much hoopla about the starting of the stadium, opening of the stadium, and all of the celebration, all of the fanfare, all of the activities, that they were distracted from the actual task at hand. They were playing against an Austin team that did not have a good record, and maybe they just took it lightly or didn't focus enough on the game and on the opponent because they were so excited and focused about the starting in their new fancy stadium and going to their new locker room and all that stuff. The other thing is this team did have 11 players on national team duty that had just gotten back between Wednesday and Thursday. So they had very little time, honestly, to prepare for this opponent. They literally, 11 of these players were gone all over the world, flying back on Wednesday, returning to practice Thursday. And Thursday's training session was the open training at the new stadium, which involved the fans and hoopla. And, so it was not a normal week. I will say this for them, and I'm not making excuses. I'm just maybe coming up with an explanation. It was not a normal week. It was a week where guys were arriving late in the week from all over the globe. And then they arrived to a festival, a carnival, festivities surrounding the opening of the new stadium. It was not like a normal week where they wake up Monday and say, okay, we're playing Austin FC on Saturday. Let's get in there. Let's work. Let's get prepared. Let's watch film. Let's dissect the opponent. I'm not sure that was happening for a good part of this week. So I'm not saying you give them a pass. They do need to improve things, but I do think maybe there were some situations this week that were different. Maybe, I don't know.
Look,
do you think so or no?
I'm with you. I think on the short window part, I think that factors in. I wouldn't say it's the complete reason, but I think it definitely, you're right. I think it does factor in. I think there's also there's still 6 to 7 months left before we're even near the playoffs, where we really need to give a, you know what, and really tighten the belts, so to speak, and all of that. So
they're pacing them. Maybe they're just the urgency isn't there. Urgency missing.
It's several factors that are tying into all this, and these are veterans for a large part of this roster are veteran teams, veteran players still that have been through the wars. They know it. They know kind of how to pace themselves and whatnot. So all that kind of factors in. Now, I don't think that we should just, do this and say that it's that. This team is still disjointed right now. They're still
disjointed.
But they are still very capable of, and that's where I go back to the spurts, where when it's on, holy crap, it can be a lot like last year. I mean, Tadeo Allende still hasn't been Tadeo Allende. And they were saying it on the broadcast. He hasn't done anything yet.
Right.
But we saw how brilliant he was.
He had 9 goals in the playoffs.
Silvetti, I love Silvetti. Silvetti is amazing. Every time they bring him in, it seems like he gives them a spark of energy. But this year, he has, but it still hasn't shown on the score sheet yet. And then there's the Terrame issue, which we're going to get to now, where it hasn't quite clicked yet. When is it going to? When does this? And now they've made the decision, as we mentioned before, to bring him off the bench in the second half of these games. I mean, look at halftime. Right. The stats were in Austin's favor after the first half, all of it. Expected goals, chances, you name it. To then, by the end of the game, what he mentions about 18 goal chances, 3/4 of that came in the second half.
Yeah, no, the second half was good. And Mascherano's going to talk now a little bit about the subs and all that. One stat that's interesting. It's an interesting stat, and this is not a knock on Messi. I know all the Messi lovers are watching the show, but this is a stat that's interesting that shows maybe that they're not as connected as they were when they had Sergio Busquets and Jordi Alba, who were the guy, and Luis Suarez and all these guys who knew him so well over last season. Last season, he had 29 goals and 19 assists. Okay, 29 goals, 19 assists. This year so far in MLS games, he has 5 goals, 0 assists. He has no assists so far. Right. Now, is that a knock on Messi? Not necessarily, because he could be delivering the ball, and it's the person on the other end that is not finishing, that is not connecting with him, that is not meshing with him, that the chemistry is not there yet the way it was at the end of last season. To me, it's a reflection, not so much that Messi is doing something wrong, that he's not getting assists, is that he is not connecting players are not connecting with him. He is not connecting with them. It's a two-way street. And for Messi to have 0 assists in 5 games is not the way it was last year. So something is still, they are disjointed would be the word that you said. They're not connecting the way they were last year.
I'm going to
At
go
the end
back
of last
to
year, especially.
I'm going to go back to the conversation we had a couple episodes ago, which you brought up, of the chemistry of, was it the he being Messi has to have the correct wingman, so to speak, or wingmen, plural.
Yes,
and
people that he trusts, people that he knows that if he gives them the ball, they're going to either get right back to him, or they're going to score. They're going to do the right thing. That is still in the works. Jordan
had to have Pippen. Mahomes has to have Kelsey. So on and so on. Insert your favorite dynamic duo in sports. Berterame and him, at least not now, at least not yet. It's not. And that led
and look
to
what
this
happened
decision.
when he brought Suarez. Okay, look what happened when he brought Suarez, and people have been ripping him. He's 39 years old. His knees, this, that, and the other. On the bench, guess what? He came in.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Messi has his wingman. He's 39 years old, but guess what he did? He scored. He scored, and he almost scored again. And he almost scored again. He had his hand taped.
He had his hamstring taped.
Yes, everything was taped. He was taped up.
He's being held together by Scotch tape, but he's the one scoring. So what does that tell you?
Let's look. Yeah, Mascherano was asked some stuff about. We have another clip from Mascherano about the game. Right. I think where he addressed the subs.
Yes.
No, mira, al final cuando veíamos que, sobre todo cuando nos ponemos por debajo, el marcador ya teníamos decidido quizás empezar a tomar más riesgo, hacer una línea de 3 con Gonza, Maxi y Mika. Y bueno, el cambio de Yannick por David fue un cambio de posición, donde obviamente Yannick nos daba quizá un poco más de fortaleza física para jugar ese duelo en la mitad de la cancha. Y sí, lo que hicimos es quizás ya tener más amplitud con Toto de un lado, con Tadeo del otro, y poner a Germán entre centrales para poder fijar a sus centrales y tener más superioridad en el medio con Yannick, Rodrigo y Telasco, y el descenso de Leo. Creo que no fue resultando, pero bueno, después cuando entra Luis veíamos que quizás necesitábamos refrescar la posición ahí de Telasco. Ya no necesitábamos, quizás ya el partido estaba bastante roto, entonces no necesitábamos tener superioridad en el medio porque estábamos prácticamente jugando en el campo rival. Entonces lo que sí necesitábamos es más gente en el área, y lo que nos da Luis es lo que pasó. Al final le cayeron 2 pelotas ahí, fueron 2 goles. Lamentablemente la segunda terminó en fuera de juego, pero es alguien que ha hecho más de 600 goles en su carrera. Entonces al final vas directamente a decir, estamos atacando en el último tercio, vamos a generar situaciones, lo habíamos hundido al rival. Bueno, necesitábamos tener más gente adentro porque ya Leo descendía. Entonces, para que Germán no esté solo, lo teníamos a Germán, a Luis, y teníamos 2 extremos, Tadeo y Toto, y Leo por detrás.
Yeah, so he explains there a little bit, that the subs, what they were trying, they were trying to dominate the midfield and all this stuff with a lot of midfield players, but it wasn't quite working out. And so he said when they decided to bring Luis in and, refresh Telasco Segovia, he said at that point in the game was already broken. He said in that point, it wasn't as important to have superiority in the midfield. What they really needed at that point was more scoring chances. We needed more players in the area, and they were desperate. Let's face it, they were desperate because they did not want to lose the opening game of their new Pink Palace. They did not want to lose that. They wanted to at least tie, if not win. So he said we needed more players in the area, and he said, and look what happens. We put in Luis because that is what Luis does. The thing is, they can't use Luis Suarez if they're going to play a system where he has to run up and back and up and back. That is not going to work. That is not his forte. His forte is to be in the area and basically be close to the goal, and he can be lethal when he does that. But he does not have the energy and the legs anymore to be, going back and forth, back and forth. So he said at this point in the game, what they needed was players in the area. So rather than have Germán Berterame by himself up there, they put him with Luis, the two of them. Messi retreated back a little bit. Then you've got the two guys on the wings. And he said, and look what happens. 2 balls fall to Luis Suarez, and he scores both times. One of them, unfortunately, he said was called offside. But he said, basically 2 balls fell to his feet, and he scored twice. And so he said, this is a man who has scored 600 goals.
Right.
He mentioned it, and you cannot set that aside. Yes, he's older. He did need to be replaced. The team did better without him in the starting lineup in the playoffs. There is no question. That was the right decision then. But when you are in need of goals, he does still play or can play an important role. And he does connect with Messi. He is a guy who has that telepathy with Messi.
But that team that was better off without him had Alba, had Busquets, and all those young strikers. Now you take Alba and Busquets out of the equation. You still have some of those young strikers.
Alba Busquets were getting the ball to those strikers. The whole idea there was to get young guys with legs to get behind the defense, to get behind the back line. That's what Suarez isn't going to do. So to have Silvetti and Allende get behind the back line, and then Sergio Busquets and Jordi Alba delivering the ball to them and the other players, but delivering the ball to them behind the back line. This is a different team this year. This is a different team. This is a team in construction.
This is the John Williams Symphony Orchestra without the conductor right now. The conductor's out taking a break. They have to figure out who the right conductor is. Sometimes it's Messi, but it can't only be Messi. So they're dealing with that right now.
The other players are working their way into their new roles. People are playing new roles. There are new players who were not even on this team last year. There are players like Yannick Bright, who's in a different role when he doesn't have Sergio Busquets next to him. He was Sergio Busquets, right-hand man. Now he is supposed to be playing in that type of a position. So they're adjusting. They're still adjusting. They are still adjusting.
Think about the 2 caliber of players you're trying to replace too. I mean, it's not that we say it and it sounds casual, and because we've kind of been spoiled by the way that they can bring in these elite caliber players. But think about the 2 guys they're replacing, Michelle. These are
2 legends. Legends.
It's not that. I mean, come on, it's not that easy. So, well, let's hear what Mascherano had to say about Berterame and his performance so far.
Muy tranquilo, trabajando mucho, siempre brindándose para el equipo. Es un jugador de equipo. Germán, más allá de que es un chico que ya tiene una trayectoria, que le ha ido muy bien, ha venido con muchísima humildad a ganarse un lugar acá, y también es parte mía como entrenador tratar de encontrarle las variantes para que él se sienta lo más cómodo posible. No es solamente un tema de él, sino es un tema mío y un tema del equipo en general, pero nosotros confiamos plenamente en él. No hemos traído un jugador para 5 o 6 partidos, lo dije el otro día, lo hemos traído para 3 o 4 años. Todo necesita un tiempo de adaptación. Germán es un chico que venía jugando en un sistema diferente. Nosotros tenemos que amoldarlo a cómo venimos jugando, porque también tenemos otros jugadores que ya conocen nuestra idea y la han llevado a la perfección el año pasado, por eso terminamos como terminamos. Y nada, tratar de seguir hacia adelante. No tengo dudas de que tarde o temprano el arco se le va a abrir, y no tengo dudas que va a tener mucho éxito acá en Miami.
Okay, so he's got a full vote of confidence. Germán Berterame is getting a full vote of confidence from his manager, from Javier Mascherano, saying this guy is a complete team player. He's a team player. He works extremely hard. He's very humble. And he said, really, it's on me as the manager to find a way to make him feel comfortable with this new team. He said that, it's a completely different system from what he played last year with his former team with Monterrey. And he said that, other players on this team are now familiar with how we do it and our style. And that is why we were able to play the way we were at the end of last season. And he said, I have to find a way to make him feel comfortable. And he said, but I have total faith, complete faith in him. This is not a player we brought for 5 or 6 games. This is a player that we have signed for 3 to 4 years, and it's going to take an adjustment period, different system, different style. But he said, I have complete faith that he will make a breakthrough and become comfortable and be a very important part of the team. So full vote of confidence, no matter what the fans may be thinking or whatever, full vote of confidence from Javier Mascherano.
Yeah, I mean, remains to be seen, but again, that's the right thing to say. If you're the coach right now, you want this team moving forward and trying to find solutions and not doubts. So one thing in the same vein of that is the defense and the way they've had lapses this year. And you mentioned it, Michelle, the desperation factor. It's a bit of a trend because I'm going to go back to the Coliseum. 1-0 down against LAFC. What happened? Had to go desperation mode. Took some risk. What happened? LAFC beat them, put some in the back of the net. Orlando, 2-0. Desperation. That day it worked. They won 4-2. Nashville in the Champions Cup. Same thing. Desperate. 1-1. We're going to get eliminated. That didn't work. This one, again, peppering the... No. Yankee Stadium. I'm sorry. Positive ending. It worked. This game, mixed results, got the tie. But my point is, that's at least 4 or 5 examples I've given you right there where they're not starting strong. They're ending up in these desperate moments and then having to play catch up. And this can't continue if this team wants to get where it wants to get. I know it's super early. We mentioned it, 6 months to go, all that. But they've got to find a solution. And Maxi Falcone, who almost won the game in the closing seconds with 2 of those headers that just barely missed, talked about that and how teams are coming after him because there's a whole league. I think I wrote it that way in my story. There's a whole league hungry to dethrone the rock stars, and they're going to be coming after them.
The rock stars and their big fancy pink palace now.
Yep. Yeah. So here you go. Here's Maxi talking about it.
Sí, la verdad que como dije, ¿no? Regalamos un primer tiempo por ahí en el cual no fuimos nosotros, no entramos con la convicción que dictaba el partido. También, como siempre digo, ¿no? Estamos en un equipo hoy en día que por los jugadores que tenemos nos quieren ganar todo. También somos el último campeón y los equipos que vienen a jugarnos de local o nosotros vamos de visita nos quieren arrancar la cabeza, como digo yo, y por ahí no tomamos el primer tiempo con esa seriedad y lo pagamos bastante caro, e incluso pudo haber sido peor, ¿no? Como decimos en lo personal, fui por ahí un poquito de menos a más. En el primer tiempo estaba un poco ahogado, que yo creo que por ahí también es normal, que vengo de una lesión en la cual me perdí 4 partidos y la idea es recomponerse rápido, ¿no? Yo creo que en el segundo tiempo ya me sentí un poco más fresco, con más aire y nada, tratando de ayudar, ¿no? De mi lado, en lo que necesita el equipo. Lamentablemente la frustración, como decís vos, de no conseguir los 3 puntos, porque somos un equipo fuerte, somos un equipo que juega bien y tenemos que quedarnos con lo positivo también, que creo que el segundo tiempo fuimos un equipo totalmente diferente al primero, y si hacemos eso el fin de semana que viene, no digo que no vamos a caer con esto.
Yeah, Maxi, being very honest too about his own performance. He said, I have to admit, well, first of all, as a group, he said we weren't ourselves. We did not have the conviction that we needed for a game like this. And then he said, to be honest, he said that the other teams, like you mentioned, said the other teams want to rip our heads off. We are the defending champions. The other teams want to rip our heads off. So we have to come in, and if we don't, we're going to pay the price, which we did in the first half. And he said, as far as him, he admitted, he said, I was struggling, to be honest, in the first half. He said, I was coming off an injury. I was a little bit tired. I was a little winded. I had 4 games off. He missed 4 games. So he said that he himself felt that he was not himself and he was struggling. In the second half, he said he felt a little more energy in the second half, but that is something that he has to work himself also back into the shape that he was before his injury. And, we have to focus on the positives and move forward. So Maxi Falcone always very, always good with perspective, giving perspective of personal and team wise. But yeah, they need to play. Everyone wants to beat them. They are the defending champions now, and they have Messi, and now they have this big fancy building that these people are going to come play in, and they better be fired up. I know they're thinking about World Cup, and I know that the season doesn't end until December, and they know that and all that, but they don't want to be losing games and tying games and be falling down, slipping down in the standings to where they have to dig themselves out of a hole.
Well, you
So
can't
they can
be.
start,
You can't keep playing with fire the way they are. I mean, look, that's the examples I was giving. Some have worked, but some don't.
Yep.
Not every. You keep doing that, you're going to be on this wave the whole season where you're going to lose some, win some, and that's not what you need to do.
It's not going to be good enough.
No, exactly. They're going to come up short again. And as far as Maxey goes, yeah, it's good for them to have him back. His presence, especially on the defensive side too, that was missed these last few games. And I always admire the athletes that can wear it in the difficult times and come out, face the press, and really, give perspective on the team without bashing their teammates, but be forthcoming. And he's definitely been one of those players throughout these past couple of years for Inter Miami. So good that he's back in the lineup. They're going to need him in the next stretch of games coming up. The team is back in the Pink Palace, like you called it, Michelle, on Saturday, facing the New York Red Bulls. Then they have another week off before they face the Colorado. That one's a road game. Then they have Real Salt Lake also on the road, and then they're back for New England on the 25th. And then the first, on May 2nd, looking way ahead right now, the first Florida Derby against Orlando City. The first time Orlando City and their purple comes to face the pink in Miami.
Ooh,
Orlando's struggling. Orlando's struggling, but that's going to be
bad right
big.
They're really bad right now. Yeah.
But again, hey, everybody said, hey, they should beat the crap out of Austin. They're not that good.
Right.
And look what happened. So and thoughts, Michelle, just as this team faces this next stretch and what needs to happen.
No, I mean, I just think what I just said, they need to, they have to put their full focus on this next stretch of games, and then they're going to have a break for the World Cup. MLS is taking a break, from mid to late May. They're going to have a break for World Cup. For this little stretch, they need to really focus, and they need to stay on top of the standings. They cannot let themselves slip. I think it's really important for them to win home games. They've been waiting. They played 5 games on the road. So excited to be able to finally play in their new fancy home. They need to start winning some games in this home. They need to establish that this is a tough place to play, that this is their home, and they should take that. They should have an advantage. They should have an advantage over the next several games.
Yeah, and if you look at the standings, as Michelle mentioned before, they're only 2 points behind the leader in the Eastern Conference right now, which is Nashville, speaking of Nashville, and tied with 2 other teams for second right now with 11 points. So very much still wide open, still very early.
Mix. Yeah.
Still in the mix, exactly. So we'll be back next week to talk about how they did against the Red Bulls, see how the Act 2 of New Stadium goes against the Red Bulls on Saturday. Michelle will have you covered as far as previewing the game is concerned. I'll be there on Saturday night to bring you live coverage of the game, and we'll be back with Inside Inter Miami next week to talk all about it and look ahead to what's next beyond that. Until then, thanks as always for watching. Thank you for catching us on YouTube or listening to us on your favorite podcatcher. Until next week, for Michelle Kaufman, I'm Andre Fernandez. Thanks for watching Inside Inter Miami.